Welcome to Throw Off the Lines, the podcast where we navigate life's changes, explore new horizons, and embrace the journey. I'm your host, Stephanie York, an executive coach with a passion for charting new courses on the water and in life. Ready for some total change? Let's dive in. Hi there, this is Stephanie York with Throw Off the Lines, and I want to welcome you to an episode that is very, very important to me. And it's something that I had to deal with most of my life in one form or another. And it started when I was very young and I didn't know. It's an episode on shame and understanding shame, its impact and how you can affect it. I didn't know shame was such a big problem for me. I didn't know that it's what made me be really loud and abrasive. It's also a reason that I frequently drank in social settings, and it's a reason why I struggled to feel like I deserved better. I didn't put good boundaries up because of shame. I was struggling to heal because of shame, and I really felt like it was an important topic for us to cover on my podcast because it's something that I have worked really hard at healing and coming back from. So kind of the definition of shame is an unpleasant feeling of guilt or regret or sadness. So if you're feeling guilt about things and you don't know why, if you have regrets about things, if there's a sadness caused by a perceived shortcoming or maybe one of your own bad behaviors and you're sad about that, it can also refer to a state of kind of being in disgrace or disrepute. If you feel like you are shameful, all of these things can often lead back to shame. And sometimes it's a really good idea. I covered SAD, seasonal affective disorder. I'm covering a lot of different things. This is an episode that I'm going to call a part of my recovery series. And, I think that we all need to look at these guilts, regrets, and sadnesses and perceived shortcomings. And do we feel disgraced or do we feel less than lovable, less than worthy? Then taking a look at shame and working through thoughts and feelings of shame is really, really, really well worth building a better sense of what that did to you, how it exists in your life. So I just wanted to cover this topic because it's a core topic for me. I was very embarrassed growing up because I often had horrible clothing. I grew up on a farm and my mom and dad separated and my father didn't provide any child support to my mom, and she worked 3 jobs and she did her best, but she wasn't emotionally equipped to raise children. And it was a really tough time in the 70s. And, I often only had 2 pairs of jeans, for school through the whole year of school. And I had to pick strawberries in the summer to buy them and to even have new jeans for school because my mom just didn't have the money. There were 4 of us kids. I also had to care for horses. I was lucky enough to have horses, and I worked 2 or 3 jobs. Starting at the age of 14, I was babysitting. 15, 14, I was picking strawberries to buy jeans. My brother was baling hay at the age of 14. We were doing anything we could, and I'd have to go care for horses first thing in the morning, and then I'd get on the bus, and I always felt like I looked bad, I looked poor, I smelled bad, I did not have anything extra. I had 1 pair of shoes. I didn't even have winter boots. I did have cowboy boots, but you can't wear cowboy boots to school. I mean, you can, and I did sometimes, but I hid it as well as I could. But the feeling of being poor, not having enough, being hungry, which I was frequently hungry, it all added up to a lot of shame at a very early age. And I didn't have the ability to affect that. I didn't know how. And I carried a lot of that into my young adult life and obviously into even as a more mature adult. Feeling shame is bad. That if you can't handle it, it will continue to add up on itself. So there's so many things that make us feel shame. Feeling shame for lying. Maybe you lied about something, and maybe it's even just a white lie to protect somebody. But if you're brought up in a really moral-centric family, even small lies are shameful to you, and you carry that around with you. Maybe you feel shameful for being out of work, or you feel shameful for treating somebody badly. Every time if I snap at somebody in line at the grocery store, I don't do it very often anymore because I'm really mindful, but I feel bad about treating somebody badly later. I'm feeling shame for being rude. I feel shameful for being rude. Feeling shame for being exposed in public. I was once sitting in a big group of women, and they were all a little bit older than me, and we were all just talking and chatting, and I didn't really know the women in the circle. And then somebody who did know me was sitting on the other side and kind of called me out and was like, well, what did you do? Why did you do this? And I felt exposed because I had buried shame, and I snapped at my friend in front of everybody, and it seemed really rude. And then I processed it, and later on I went to apologize to her, but I think it affected our relationship from then on that I snapped at her in front of everybody. But she also wasn't nice in the questions she asked me, but it was my shame that caused me to snap at her. And then I felt more shame. And so the list is endless, what causes us shame. And it's all different for everybody. I'm going to talk about ways to address the shame that you may or may not have in your life. And we're going to talk a little bit about how it affects society and individuals. Shame's considered a toxic feeling because it attacks the core of your self-worth. And it makes you feel fundamentally flawed or inadequate and unworthy of love, unworthy of promotion, unworthy of everything. I mean, I meet people in my coaching who are doing pretty good, but they feel like a sham or a fraud, and they're full of shame. Or people who their relationship is abusive or toxic, and they're in the world pretending everything is okay. They're full of shame and a lot of other things too, but it often leads to deep-seated feelings of isolation. Nobody understands what you're struggling from, and you can't talk about it because shame keeps you quiet. And low self-esteem is another huge effect of shame. I had really low self-esteem, and it can even contribute to destructive behaviors to cope with the pain it generates. You will do anything to get away from the pain of shame, and a lot of substance abuse comes from shame and feeling unworthy. Unlike guilt, which focuses on one specific action, I'm guilty because I did this thing, shame makes individuals feel like their entire being is flawed. And that's why this is such an important thing to address. You can feel guilty about something that you did or something that happened, but shame is an internalized thing, and it can be so toxic. So what are some key reasons why your self-perception is impacted? And I have a whole podcast on perception versus perspective. And because I've come from shame and I've healed so much of myself, frequently when I talk to somebody, I can tell that there is a self-perception impact on them, and I don't know often where it's coming from. And it makes individuals feel like their whole identity is flawed, not just a specific action, and it leads to a sense of deep unworthiness and self-disgust. So if you're feeling really just awash in being unworthy, not deserving, unlovable, which is a huge one, especially if you're out there in the world single, if you're out in the world trying to get a job, addressing your feelings of shame can lift you up halfway to whole if you can work on it. Shame also leads to social isolation because we don't want to risk taking our shameful selves out into the world. And we don't want to be exposed, and we don't want to be judged because we couldn't take any more shame than we already feel. And having shame, even a little bit, can lead people to withdraw from relationships and social situations. In the dating world, I just did an episode on dating, where I talk a lot more about working on yourself so that you can then be healthy enough to see other healthy people or see unhealthy people so you can put up boundaries. But when you're full of shame, you will maybe go out on dates because you really want to be with someone, and then you can't take it anymore. You're exposed, you're feeling judgmental and vulnerable, and you withdraw and you hurt that person. And then that adds to your shame. So it further reinforcing feelings of isolation. And it happens over and over again if you don't work on it, where you don't go out and date. You don't go out and see your friends. You don't go after that job that you need. You stay stuck in a job, or you stay stuck in a relationship that's toxic. So shame feeds so many things, and it can often feed on itself and make it even harder to address the root cause of it. So any work you can do on shame, even if you only have a tiny bit, any work you can do on shame will make you a healthier person, will make you a happier person, and can work towards being a better person in the world. Shame also helps you internalize criticism. So shame can often stem from internalized negative messages received from others, leading to a constant inner critic that reinforces your feelings of inadequacy. So if you feel shame and then somebody says something to you and you haven't addressed your shame, that comment that's negative or mean doesn't bounce off of you. You absorb it, and then it becomes another thing for your inner critic to say. So I'm going to do an episode on what to say when you talk to yourself. And we're going to talk a lot about some more ways that you can address this. Shame also leads to difficulty in processing, which is kind of what I was just saying. We internalize negative messages. We become vulnerable and hide. Unlike guilt, which can be addressed by taking responsibility and making amends for whatever you feel guilty about, shame is often harder to process as it feels deeply ingrained within yourself. If you have a big bucket of shame inside of you and you do something, you feel guilt, but you also add to shame. So learning how to process this again won't absolve you of guilt, won't make you Teflon coated, but it'll make you a happier, healthier, whole person who can address what happens to you. And shame has a huge link to mental health issues. Chronic shame can contribute to various mental problems, including depression, anxiety, substance abuse, eating disorders. I haven't even talked about that. Possibly even death, and shame can be deadly. We should consider our own actions towards others when we judge or say things. If you're saying something really mean to somebody, or if you're feeling vulnerable and you snap at a friend in a group, you might be adding to their shame. So be thoughtful about what you say and how you judge others, because you do not know what's going on in their life, and it's not our place to put guilt or shame on others. So shame can make it hard to seek help. Another reason why I think it's important to talk about it in this podcast, I've talked to people who come to me for help with their business and come to find out they have a deep inner work that they need to do. If it's too much heavy lifting, I send them to a therapist. I help them with the business, but they find somebody who can help them process things from their past. But if it's hard to seek help, sometimes they'll talk to me about business, but then we'll scratch the surface on shame or inner problems. And then we'll start to crack that open and say, let's do some work on that so you can feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit safer, a little more trusted with me. And then we can open it up and then say, yeah, we need to get you a therapist. But people will hide their shame. And it can lead to a downward spiral of negative feelings. I, again, talk to people frequently who need help with their business, but they're deeply depressed. And when we get to the depression and the spiral of negative feelings, their self-speak is terrible. And there's some stuff you can do right away that is easy to do to help you with some of those negative feelings and the shame. So we're going to talk about that here a little bit later on in the podcast. Shame can help prevent people from moving forward in recovery. So if you are trying to overcome gambling addiction or drinking or smoking or low self-esteem, or you aren't asking for promotions and things, having shame unaddressed will prevent you from moving forward in anything that you're trying to work on. And it can contribute to and continue substance use disorders. So if you in any way want to cut back on drinking or you want to eat healthier, sugar is a huge one. I have a friend who says, I cannot quit eating sugar. And she's put on a lot of weight lately and she's really discouraged. And we talk about, what do you say to yourself when you are gaining weight? And she said, I just can't quit sugar. And she feels shameful and she wants to start dating. And so we talk a little bit about it, but this is a big deal in a lot of people's lives. So I wanted to really briefly talk about a shame epidemic. It's kind of come up in online and stuff, and it refers to a kind of a growing prevalence of feelings of shame or public shunning as a social phenomenon. And I think that it's the more we open ourselves up to social media and the more that we are linking into algorithms. Here's a post about Taylor Swift and she should be ashamed, or here's a post about whether you like them or not, Kanye West, and our judgment of celebrities and these shame-filled documents. It kind of leads to us thinking, well, I should be more ashamed of this habit or this behavior because shame is everywhere on the internet. And the more you click on shameful stories, the more shameful stories that come to you. That's how the algorithms work. And so there's a social media amplification. Public shaming is often amplified on social platforms where people's mistakes or failures or controversial opinions. I mean, God forbid somebody have an opinion that you don't agree with. They get exposed and harshly judged. People are making a lot of money on YouTube just doing shame-based videos. And if you are watching those and addicted to them, you might want to think about where your shame levels are in your own life, because judging and shaming other people and doing it from the safety of a screen is not addressing your own life. It's going viral, looking at posts and calling out and cancel culture. And by participating in these, you're also contributing to a shame epidemic. Keep that in mind. What are you putting in your body? Are you putting in a bunch of shame-filled fail videos? It just feels hurtful. And then there's comparison culture that builds shame quickly. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, others often promote unrealistic portrayals of success or beauty and happiness. I myself often will just post pictures about a great place that I've been to. I want to share, hey, I'm having a good time and I'm happy, but that doesn't happen all the time. I'm not living the most fabulous life. I love my life. I'm loving it more and more every day when I work on stuff. But when you compare your life to what's going on online, that can feed into your personal shame, and we can be ashamed or feel inadequate about our own lives. And if you haven't worked on shame, you're just putting more stuff in that bucket. There's a mental health stigma as well. Despite people being aware that there is a rise in suicides and they're publicized, especially if that person has had any celebrity whatsoever, we know that they're young and we know that they died, and then it comes out. And many people still feel ashamed to admit struggles with mental health or personal failures due to the pressures or fear of judgment. And I think it's getting better, but I do know for a fact when I talk to people that I'm coaching that a lot of them in their late 40s, 50s, 60s, they struggle with mental health. And again, I'll say they'll hire me to help them with their business. And we go right in and we start chopping up stuff and saying, do these things. And they get better exercises and they all of a sudden are doing all the things that are going to grow their business. And then come to find out that they've been feeling depressed, deeply depressed for years. They're in a toxic relationship. They have an abusive relationship with somebody. They are carrying all of the load for the household and the other person isn't doing anything. And it's really, really hard that there's a stigma around. If you were to say, I feel really shameful, who would you say that to? You can't even say that to your own friends. The cultural and societal pressures too, especially I know here in the US, we all have to portray success. And that's why you'll find people who are living so far beyond their means so that they don't get judged. They feel shameful about credit card debt. They feel shameful they don't own a home. They have to have the best house and the best clothes. And that is often coming from a place of shame that the culture and the society puts pressure on them and they don't meet expectations. There's also moral outrage and cancel culture. So publicly holding others accountable can quickly turn into unproductive shaming, where the focus shifts from being constructive, which is what I do in my coaching. I'll say, well, you did that and here was the outcome. And is that what we wanted? And how could we do it differently? That's a learning environment versus a personal attack. So I'm putting myself out there with this podcast and I haven't gotten any personal attacks yet, but it's still pretty tiny. I'm waiting for my first ones. And personal attacks are where you'll see somebody will post an opinion. This is how I feel about this. And then they get attacked from 15 different directions. And we've seen celebrities take all their social media down. And when you see that that's happening out there, you are far less likely to admit any weaknesses. And you're far less likely to want to be measured by other people in society. So you won't talk about your unhealed shame. And unhealed shame can have a profound impact on how you navigate social interactions, often shaping the way we perceive ourselves and others. And there's ways that manifests that's really unhealthy. So by not healing your shame, you have this massive fear of rejection or judgment. So unhealed shame, it'll create a sense of deep inadequacy, making us feel oversensitive to criticism or perceived judgment. So here I am, if I'm 52 years old and I just got divorced and I'm in my 50s and I'm feeling old and I have unresolved shame and I want to put myself out there, but I don't feel good enough. So I go on a diet. Diet isn't working. I try to buy nice clothes and then I go out on these online dating apps and I get terrible comments from people. And then I withdraw and I feel inadequate. And then I don't try to go out and meet somebody for another year or two. Next thing you know, I'm 55 and maybe I had a bad relationship with somebody because I didn't heal shame and I didn't heal these other things. It just continues to build the fear of rejection and the fear of judgment. And eventually you just stop going out altogether and you're leading a very unhappy life. So having shame will also make it more difficult to be authentic. So it often convinces individuals that our true selves are unworthy. So I don't want to be real in a conversation with my friends. I want to pretend I'm somebody else because I feel unworthy for who I am. So I'm just going to put up a fake facade on social media. I'm going to pretend I'm okay in public because I'm desperately lonely and I want friends and I want to date and I want to get out because I can't sit in my apartment anymore. And, if you haven't dealt with shame, it does keep you from being who you really are. Do you even know who you are if you're buried in shame? Probably not. And then it creates really low self-esteem. And what I find that if you're carrying unhealed shame, you may believe that you're fundamentally flawed, and it affects your confidence in social situations, in professional situations, and it can often lead to avoiding social opportunities or minimizing your contributions to a conversation. You might think, I don't have anything important to add. That person's so confident and I'm just unworthy. And if you address your shame, you'll realize that we all have a multifaceted selves and you bring all of your life's experiences to the table when you're talking to people, and they need to and want to hear what you have to say as long as it's real and authentic. We're in this era of AI kind of taking over and we don't even know if a video we see online is a real person. Well, you know what? The value of individuals and authentic selves is going to start being measured. And when you are finding yourself and getting rid of old shame and coming out of your shell and being authentic, it's amazing. Your self-esteem gets better. And I tell you, if you walk out into the world healing these parts of yourself, you become instantly attractive because you know who you are and other people want to be around somebody who knows who they are. It's really, really important. So let's talk about how to combat feelings of shame. You can acknowledge the shame, practice self-compassion, and we're going to talk about that. I have a link for self-compassion. There's a great woman who has she has a whole website and she has videos on YouTube. It's just amazing work for self-compassion. It's really good, deep work. Seek support from others. Find your friends that you're willing to open up to and feel vulnerable with. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. I had to forgive myself for growing up really poor and feeling shameful. I had to forgive myself for all the bad stuff that happened in my life when I was younger. And I had to forgive myself for when I acted out because I felt less than, when I jumped on other people because I felt so defensive. And it's such a great exercise to learn to challenge negative self-talk. Again, I'm going to have a whole episode on self-talk because self-talk saved me from depression. And maybe I'll do a whole episode just on the year 2008 because, that was a bad year for me. And I made it through and it foundationally changed me, made me a better coach. So you can engage in mindfulness practices like being present helps you get rid of shame and work actively on building your self-esteem, meditating, focus on positive aspects of yourself and your life. there's got to be some good stuff going on. I'm telling you, if you can look for 3 good things every day, it's a great exercise. Let me mention it really quick. At the end of the day, in my master's program, I had a class about positive psychology. And at the end of your day, I may have mentioned this in another podcast, write down 3 good things that happened that day. And because I don't really like fluffy stuff, even though half of what I do is fluffy stuff, in that fluffy thing, I was like, oh, okay, I had a good cup of coffee. The sunshine today. And I was a bit dismissive of the exercise. By the 3rd day, because I had to do it for a week and then report in class, by the 3rd day, I started looking first thing in the morning for good things to write on that list. It was so powerful that I tell people about it all the time. It is probably the simplest thing you can do to start looking for good things in your life. Get a piece of paper, put it next to your bed, get a journal. I don't care. It doesn't have to be a fancy journal. It could be a notepad. I do not care. And write down 3 good things before you go to sleep, and you will start to look for good things in your life. So key strategies to fight shame is identify the source of the shame. Again, we talked about that. Ask yourself what specifically is causing the shame and try to understand its root cause. Is it a real thing that is causing shame, or is it bigger in my mind? And often, like you're a kid at school, something happens to you. My girlfriend's daughter got pantsed in the lunchroom. This happened years ago. And I thought, how horrific, just awful. And she was fighting shame. And her mom, thank goodness, is an amazing mom. But that day when something like that happens, you feel mortified. And that night you feel like you just want to die. And then the next day you have to go back and face. But if you realize that this thing happened and it starts to dilute itself, and that thing happened and it did not have anything to do with how I feel about myself. It was a moment in time. So look for what the cause of you feeling shameful was and understand what that root cause was. For me, it was being very, very, very poor. And my mom refused to get welfare. We didn't have food frequently. Our home, my mom was a hoarder, so our house was full of things. I couldn't have people over. And I understand that it was things that were beyond my control caused me to have shame that I carried into adulthood. But those were not my problems, and I shouldn't feel shameful about being poor. It was a circumstance. And so I was able to address that. And now I've had other things that I've created that have caused shame, and I address them now. I jump on them and say, okay, what can I do to change this? And is this a real feeling? Is it something that I should feel guilty about? Or is it shame? And then shame has no place. So challenge any negative self-talk. So if your parent or somebody said something negative to you, challenge it. You know, my mom told me I was a terrible singer when I was a young girl. She didn't say terrible singer. She just said I was not a good singer. And then I was in the choir and I was singing soprano. I sang solos, and still being in the choir, singing solos as a soprano, I still couldn't get over the fact that she told me I was a bad singer. I was invited to sing in a band, just dating a boyfriend. And I was like, no, I'm a bad singer, because my mom told me I was a bad singer. So I'm not winning any awards with my voice, and I'm certainly not going to record an album, but I'm not a bad singer. I'm an untrained singer, which is different. But I always felt like I was a bad singer. And that might be just a really fluffy example. I have much deeper examples, and I've gone to therapists, and I've done a lot of work on myself to try to figure out what my negative self-talk is. And I'm going to have a whole episode on self-talk where I'll go a little bit deeper into some of the things that I used to say to myself. So make a list of negative things you think and feel, and then challenge those. Are they real? And start and listen to my episode on self-talk when it gets published, and really start changing what you say to yourself, because that changes your subconscious. And when you look at the big giant iceberg, the little tiny bit that's above the water, that's our conscious. The big giant bit that's under the water is our subconscious. And in that subconscious is where all the negative self-talk and the things people say and the shame, that's where it lurks. So by planting positive self-talk, we're able to reprogram the subconscious, and it works. Again, the year 2008's proof to me. And then you need to practice self-compassion. And again, I would listen to Dr. Kristen Neff, because she's amazing at it. Treat yourself with kindness and understanding. Eat healthy. do sleep hygiene, wash your face, put products on your face. Great YouTube videos. Go to listen to Dr. Kristen Neff, Neff. And again, the link's in the show notes. Practice mindfulness and meditation. Get a journal out and write in it every day. And then, so I have people who say, I can't afford a therapist. Therapists aren't cheap. Okay, I get that. If you get a journal and you write in it every day, all the things you're thinking about, good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter. Or even if you just scribble that day. And if you come back to that journal in a week, a month, 6 months, you're going to see progress, and you're able to talk to yourself about, I used to really think badly about myself a month ago. And then I've done this work and I don't feel that bad. That poor woman. I'm going to try and be more positive and continue to build on this. And I'm telling you, a journal is amazing. And then talk to someone that you trust and build a support network. Find people who are compassionate and can help you see yourself in a different light and see what they see. Because so often people with shame and guilt and self-esteem problems go out of their way to help other people because they're trying to make up for how bad they feel about themselves. And your friends will see, hey, you're being a little bit of a doormat, or, hey, you should stand up straight and talk better about yourself because you're amazing. So get that group. And if it's really bad and you're not able to address any of this stuff on your own, please, please, please seek professional help. And if you're really in a very bad, shameful spiral, get emergency medical help. Go to your regular doctor. Your primary care physician can help you seek help. You don't have to go find a psychiatrist. You don't have to go find a psychologist. You don't have to go get somebody that you don't even know where to find them. Go to your regular primary care physician. I don't care if you haven't gone to that person for 5 years. It's their job to help you find resources within their organization. And then keep doing self-care activities, exercise, eating healthier, get hobbies, push yourself, get a little uncomfortable. I have a whole episode on change. I'm going to do another episode on change. Get all the good and bad out and start moving your body. It will impact the chemistry of your brain. Sitting still, sitting and watching things, watching the internet, that will just keep you in a shame spiral that's going to be really hard to escape. And then set realistic expectations. Avoid saying, I'm going to be sunshine and rainbows tomorrow. That can lead to, more shame or inadequacy. I didn't do it. Oh, I'm just a slug. Whatever you do, fight against shame. Often we feel it the strongest when we're the least capable of affecting it. So if you're feeling shameful, just take a breath, step back, take care of your basic needs. And this is for people who are really in a shame place. Eat something healthy, do some self-care, and write down your feelings. Often it is a temporary feeling. If you're feeling an overwhelming wave of shame, ride it out. They say in recovery circles, a craving only lasts for 20 minutes. So if you're trying to quit a habit like a sugar or alcohol or cigarettes or whatever your habit may be, set a timer, ride it out, let it go. And it will maybe be just a temporary thing. If it won't go away and you're just feeling worse and worse and worse, get medical help right away. Keep in mind that shame you feel is part of your perception of the world. So it may not be that big to anyone else around you. It might be only a small moment in time to other people, but sit back and look what has caused the feelings. Is it something you are still doing? Is it something that you can stop so that you no longer are experiencing more shame? And did it impact others? If your shame only impacted you, you don't have to get guilt involved and you don't have to feel shameful. If it's just impacting you, that's one piece of shame that you can let go. And can you do anything to apologize, or is it better to take time to figure out your feelings? Because sometimes shame is just coming from the well within us, and the shame you're experiencing from an event or a moment in time doesn't really exist. So sit back. You don't have to do anything about it right now. Give it a day and then journal and see. Often distance and time can reduce shame and help you heal. If the activity that's causing shame is still ongoing, then you need to address whatever it is before you can heal and move on from that shame. And, I learned shame can pass. It happened enough in my childhood that I realized other people do not carry thoughts of me or what happened. unless I did something to them. So frequently, the shame I'm feeling is only my own feeling, and I can address my own feelings. That's what I'm learning to do, is take responsibility for them, see which ones are real and which ones are not. So everything feels so much bigger when it's fresh. In time, you can start to move past shame and find yourself again and become stronger and happier. This is not a permanent feeling. It just feels terrible when you're in it. And if you've had a lot of shame your whole life, which I had a lot of shame my whole life, it took me a while to move past things more quickly. Now I rarely feel shame unless I've done something, but I am actively working on being a more mindful person and not doing something that would bring me shame. But it took me years to work on it. I'm telling you, 2008 was the worst year. And now we're so far past that. So it's never too late to work on yourself. So, I just want to send out the message that if you're full of shame and it's holding you back, if you're in a situation that's continuing to cause you shame, you need to get out of that situation. You need to stop that behavior because it can lead to really, really bad things. And please take care of yourself. Work on self-care. That includes brushing your teeth twice a day, wash your face twice a day. We almost all have some kind of product. Put lotion on your skin, clip your fingernails, brush your hair every day, and work towards living your best life so that shame and doubt and any of those self-defeating things have no place in your life. It takes time, but you are worth the effort no matter what you think right now. We are all worthy of love. We are all worthy of happiness. We are all important in this world. We're special and we're precious because we're alive. So take care and know that life does get better. It's just the little stuff. And down in the resources, there's going to be what else can happen in recovery, cognitive therapies, things like that. But I put a link to 15 Minutes of Shame, which is an HBO Max documentary that kind of documents shame that has happened in our current environment with social media, and talks. Monica Lewinsky is one of the interviews in that documentary. It's pretty powerful what she went through. And then we've got Brene Brown, did a great podcast about vulnerability, shame, and bravery. And then again, Kristen Neff on self-compassion. I have a link to her YouTube videos. But please, 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 if shame lives in your life, work on getting rid of it, because it doesn't really have a place in our life unless we're doing shameful things. But if you're listening to my podcast, I guarantee you're probably working on being the best person you can be. So please go on the website, throwoffthelines.com, and send me a message if you want to talk at all. And I really, really hope that this has helped. And just work on shame every day, getting rid of it, and work on your self-worth. You're worth it. And I hope that you have a total day. Take care. Thank you for joining me on Throw Off the Lines. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe for future episodes and extras, and leave a review, share it with someone who needs a total inspiration. You can also find us on Facebook or Instagram and our Throw Off the Lines website. If you want to be a guest or have questions for the host, sign up on the website and we'll get back to you. Until next time, throw off those lines and live your best life.